So firstly, thanks everybody who's joined and signed up to today's webinar on creating continuous learning moments. My name's Josh Devani, I'm the head of sales here at Thrive, and I'm joined by Jenny, who heads up learning at Sumo Digital. So we suspect this will probably last about 40 minutes or so. We've got some slides where Jenny's going to take us through all the great things they've been doing at learning and development at Sumo. And then we'll show some real examples of actually what they've done within their LXP. And then we'll kind of open it up to any questions that anybody might have as well. So yeah, firstly, thanks Jenny for joining today to take us through this. Maybe a quick introduction from yourself to start with.
Sure, thanks Josh. So yeah, I've been working for Sumo Digital now for about a year. So Sumo Digital are the biggest UK games developer. I've worked on some really exciting titles. I can see like Lee, who loves Sackboy, which was our latest title that we launched as part of the PS5 launch, which was brilliant to be part of. A game that we've been in development for 5 years. So we have kind of some of the really big projects like that, like we call them AAA games. They're kind of the same as like a film. And then we also have some smaller games as well. But yeah, some of the kind of ones we've been involved with are Hitman, Sonic, to name but a few. So exciting place to be. Definitely,
sounds it. Well, I think let's get into the slides and then we can see where the conversation goes. So I'll hand over to you initially, Jenny, and then yeah, we'll go from there. So over to you.
Thank you. So I think, today we were really hoping to look at kind of creating continuous learning moments. And to begin with, I started to think back kind of on my career within learning development and kind of where I started and how learning was at that point in time. And when I started to think about that, it was like a lot of residential courses. You got some lovely meals and some lovely hotels and some lovely biscuits, but it was very much even as part of your induction that you'd go to that, you'd get a whole host of content, and then it was expected that that would stick with you for a potential moment in time that you needed it. And it's like how much technology has moved on to that we just don't do that in our kind of day-to-day living. Even if I think back to when I was at school, if I needed to know something, I went to the encyclopedia. Do you remember that? The encyclopedia I went to. I had the whole Britannia, and we'd look up what does this bird is, and we'd look up the index. And if I was to say to my daughters now, oh yeah, you need to know about that, go and look in a whole range of books, look through the index and find this and that and the other, it'd be like, what's this about? So I think that, now whenever we need something, we just, we use our phones, we Google it. That's everything. You Google every day, what's the, I don't know, kind of, what's the population of the UK? Oh, I'll just Google it. I'm not going to look in the encyclopedia, and I'm not going to have to think back to a course that I did 3 months ago. I'm just going to Google it. And then it's like, how do we then, within the work life, how are we then sort of moving that on from where we have been before? Because we probably still had those courses where we say, this is part of your induction, you need to do these courses, and then you need to try and remember that for a future time that you're potentially going to need it, and you're going to have to draw from that. And so kind of one of the first things that that I was asked when I came into this role is, how do we move away from learning only happens in courses at a specified moment in time? Because first of all, only certain people can go at any one point in time. It might not fit within their schedule. It might not fit within kind of, what's going on in their personal life as well. So I was like, okay. So I was thinking about learning being more fluid and learning being about in the moment when you are needing it. And I kind of gave the analogy when I first started talking about a learning experience platform. I said, like my boiler broke. Like, it was the last winter when it was a horrible winter and loads of snow, my boiler broke. And I said, what did I do at that point in time? Like we all did, I Googled it. I found a YouTube video to look at what the code was, and I tried to fix it. And luckily I was successful and I managed to get the heating back up. But what I didn't do is buy my boiler and then go on a course at the point of buying my boiler to learn all the things that might go wrong with it, to then have to recall it 2 years later when that code happened and I had to go through it, or I had to kind of dust off a folder to try and go through my notes or anything like that. Didn't need to do that. So why do we still do that in the workplace? Why are we doing that? Why are we not evolving to more kind of an internal Google system? What if you could learn when you wanted, where you wanted, at a time that was most appropriate to you. People were like, yeah, that sounds nice. So that was the first start of our learning culture, because for us, the learning, we had learning, but it was very localized, and it was very much about going onto courses. And what we wanted to start to move towards is that learning was available to everybody, but at a time and at a place that suited them the most. So that was kind of like the first step then. And then also for us, so Sumo Digital has 9 studios that are mainly in the UK, and then we also have one in India. And there's incredible knowledge across our studios. And one of the things was unlocking that knowledge. And what we wanted to say was, it doesn't matter if you've been in the industry for 25 years or for 25 days, everybody is a teacher and everybody has something that they can learn. And so by doing that, what we were saying is that you hold the knowledge, whatever that knowledge is. People come from different walks of life, different experiences. You have something to give. So let's eliminate some of this, like, this studio has this and this studio going on this course and da-da-da. And actually, we embrace that we have these different cultures in these studios, but there's knowledge that can be shared across the whole group. And then that then led into, we want to also allow those studios to sort of be a business unit within themselves, but know that they're part of this bigger thing that they can also tap into as well. And that's what's so great. Like, Sumo Digital has gone on such an expansion journey that it's allowing kind of some of that excitement also, not just within your studio, but looking beyond that as well, to be able to be sharing with that. So that was kind of like some of the things that I really wanted to achieve kind of as a first step at Sumo.
And it sounds like, Jenny, as well, a lot of your vision wasn't just learning focused, right? It's much bigger than learning, right? So you're looking to increase communication across studios and create more of a culture of sharing as well. So it's not just kind of, here's all the learning that people need to do. It was also the communication side as well, right?
Yeah, so communication was seen. So we have the best company survey. We run that survey, and that was one of the things that people asked for more of, was kind of cross communication where possible. Obviously, we work on really highly sensitive games. Everything's got to be under wrap. There are some things that even within a studio, if a team is working on a project, even the rest of the studio don't know what that is. It's really sensitive information. However, that's not to say, particularly as it's been during lockdown, people being able to share, the things that they're doing, how they're engaging their team, how they're kind of still creating that team spirit, doing that kind of stuff. All of that can be shared. And also when things do get launched, kind of like, well, here's the people behind the games. Let's meet with them. Let's hear from them. That kind of stuff is really exciting as well.
That's nice. That sounds good. Well, that's really interesting to hear your vision. So let's move on to the next stage around actually how you put this all into practice, I guess.
Yeah, so I think it was then thinking about, okay, so if we think about traditional learning being going on to a course, wanting to move into kind of a more fluid way of learning, but also then being mindful that people will be in different phases of their career, and people will also have different personal circumstances as well. So it's allowing the time to go at the accelerated rate of the individual rather than what the company is insisting it is. Because if they're insisting you're going to go on this 4-day course, that's it. That's kind of like mandated. It's just 4 days. But if you're saying, do you know what, let's flip the whole classroom. Let's flip the whole thing to say, learning can happen where you want, when you want, in these bite-sized chunks. And that might happen kind of, in the morning, that might happen that might happen over a month's time. But that is where your information is. Then when you come into the workshop, what we're going to do is that's going to be an experiential session, an exploratory session. But what it's not going to be is a step-by-step of how to do things, because you can do that at your own pace, when you want, where you want. So so that was, I guess, the first thing. And also, like you say, the comms as well. So at the same time, we wanted to have a platform. I felt it was really important to have a platform that was a hub. And that's what we call our site dojo. So dojo for us meaning a special place to kind of master that training and all of that stuff. So for us, it was about creating this hub for communication as well as learning, because communication is a learning moment. When we hear from our CEO about what he has said, that's a learning moment. When we hear from someone about a hack that they've discovered on Excel, that's a learning moment. And they're all equally valid as well. So once we kind of got the excitement around this, so I had some trailers that I was showing and people were kind of getting excited around this. So then when we launched, and it was thinking about, okay, so now we have this platform that we don't want it to be a push approach. We want this to be a collaborative. And then you think, okay, so where are the people, we know the workforce that we have. And I would say this is probably similar for a lot of people as well, is a lot of people have people who their desire is to make a difference and their desire is to contribute. And they want to learn and they want to grow, but they also have that desire to be part of it rather than just to consume it as well. So what I wanted to do was harness that curiosity and harness that desire to be part of it. So what I did was I was going to the different studios. They already had focus groups in different ways. They had a wellbeing focus group or they had an employee focus group. I just went along to the things that were already in place to say, hey, what would be some of the things you're interested in? And just saying to people, that's really what you've just mentioned. That's really cool. That'd be something that would be great to go on our new site. So it was these kind of seedlings that started to happen. There were some people that we knew that would be good as well, that we reached out to say, we know you already have some content. It'd be great that you put those on there. But really, it was a question then also, whenever you saw it in a Teams channel and particularly saying, that's a great piece of content, why don't you get that on Dojo? And it's kind of that thing that started evolving. And then what happens is people start commenting on it. So when people started commenting on the content, this kind of snowball effect happens, because then people get that validation that someone has found what they have said useful, and then they want to do the same. And actually they go, do you know what, maybe I can do this too. And one of the things that I would say is that it's about them making it not so professional and amazing. It's about, being on a phone or just, videoing your screen, because the more human it was, the more other people thought, that's something I can do. Yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And then it started to go and go. And if I'm honest, I was surprised. So we started, I think, with about 300 pieces of content. So we launched in April. We're now in November, and we have almost 1,500 pieces of content.
Of user-generated content.
User-generated, so from all different, not just from everybody. And what we did was at launch, we said, do you know what? We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're not going to push this onto people. There are some people that were eager to learn. They were asking, I want more. I live on my own. I want to learn now. I've got some time. And there were other people like, I'm up to here. Like, I've got the kids at home. I've got projects. Don't put any more on my plate. So we just sent out an email, and all it said was, do not press the red button. And of course, people kind of clicked the red button, and it took them into our site, and they had a bit of fun with it. And I think that started the curiosity. But we sort of said, because we're not going to push it as well. There was no pushing of anybody to do anything. It just naturally happened as people started commenting. The CEO comes in, he starts commenting on people's stuff. It encourages more of a flow of it.
And that launch approach was super interesting. I've seen loads and loads of companies launch new LMSs or LXPs. And that was probably one of the most interesting that I've seen. For people on the call, it was literally just a big red button sent out via email with saying, do not click here, or whatever it was. And it clicked out to the THRIVE platform. It was a really interesting way of doing it. But would you say that worked, I guess, to spark people's curiosity?
Yeah, it definitely did. And I think, we went through the whole thing of saying, we could make it a competition, we could make it really big, we could do a kind of a big bang event. And it was actually one of our founders who obviously really knows his people. And he was like, that's not us. We're, let's do something different.
Yeah.
And I think actually it was even him that said, it'd be something like a button. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. And it did. I mean, within actually over the weekend, I think we got 70% of people had logged in over a weekend. So yeah.
Not bad. And just on the content side of things, obviously you pushed a lot on the user-generated content, which has worked really well. But during the first phase as well, you also had Udemy as well as a content partner. What advice would you give to people around kind of content partners and that type of thing?
Yeah, so I think for us, it was important to have content that we weren't just relying on our people because they're really busy. And I think that's the same for every industry, that you can't just say, right, stop what you're doing. You need to create all this fabulous content. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to allow people to get into deeper learning again, when and where they wanted. So we asked people, what would that look like? What would be, where do you go to? Do you go to LinkedIn Learning? Do you go to, and Udemy kind of came back out, we did a survey, and Udemy came back as
right.
kind of the biggest one that people go to, that they pay for themselves. So we're like, okay, this seems like a sensible option to trial.
Cool, that sounds good. Just before we go to the next slide, Jenny, we've got one question here from Joe, who says, how do you differentiate the different job skills so it's relevant, or does everybody have similar jobs and skills at Sumo?
Everyone has so many different jobs and skills. So even kind of, if you think about creating a game, you know, even the art, within art, you'll have people that create the environment, and people who create the character, and people who create the props, and people who create the technical part, and people that create the VFX effects. You know, it gets so granular. So then, and even within a game, a mobile game is very, very different to a console game, for example, as well. So even if you have the same, you're in the same discipline, actually it's very different depending on the kind of game you're doing as well. So that's where within Thrive, the tagging system works so well, because what that enables is a filtering system. Because then if I've uploaded something on I don't know, art within like character art, for example, I'm able to tag it as character art. So then if I'm a character artist and I want to come in and I want to look for it, I'm going to tag character artist rather than, you know, kind of like art, for example, because it needs to be more granular than that. So the tagging system is brilliant for that.
Thanks, Jenny. That sounds really interesting. And one more question before I move to the next slide, because I'm conscious of everybody's time. So it's from Anne Maria, who says, I'm curious to know, how do you organize the user-generated content? How do you structure it to make sure it can easily be found months after it's been posted? I know we can probably show some of this live, but it'd be interesting at the high level, Jenny, how you do that.
Yeah, so I think, so the front page within the Thrive platform, that's a bit like, everybody says actually it looks very much, I think the great thing about Thrive is people said, it feels like something I'm familiar with already. So it's a really easy experience already. But then when you've seen something first, it's like that front page is news. So when it's there, you need to make sure that you pin it, or that you put it into your own kind of playlist. So what we have on the front page is we have a kind of for you section. So people are able to input their interests, and then those interests will show up on the front page. So I don't see everything to do with code and art, and, you know, I get things that are around communication and leadership and things that I'm HR stuff, the stuff that I'm interested in. So that will appear on my front page. So then it's a case of me saying, okay, so the things that I'm interested in now, if there's anything I want to save for later, you have this pinning function that's really helpful for that.
And we'll show the Discover section in a few minutes as well, Jenny, around how you do that as well. I think there's some interesting parts there. But thanks for your question, Anne-Maria. Let's move to the next slide around tools, I guess. So obviously you had a big toolbox of different tools you could use to make all this come together. But do you want to share some of your key experiences using campaigns and that type of thing?
Yeah, so we didn't actually use campaigns to start with for a bit, and I didn't. So one of the things was, because we launched during just when the pandemic was starting, so kind of March, April time, what is a kind of 3-month project was kind of squeezed into 6 weeks. So I probably didn't understand the real power of campaigns to begin with, because it was a question of, we want to get something so that we can allow people to learn, that we can put out content to communication to people so they can understand what's going on, and also get some social events going so people feel part of something together. But actually campaigns is brilliant now that, you know, when we started with them, it's like brilliant way to capture imagination, to get things going. So kind of 2 examples of campaigns. One of them we did was a Pride campaign that went really, really well. Lots of user generated content around that. And we also had a panel. And I guess, had we not had Thrive, how would that have worked? It would have been a stream of emails, maybe some Teams channels. So it would have been a mess of kind of like, oh, now we have this coming up, and now this person has said something, or people wouldn't have even contributed probably. But because we have this thing where people feel trusted, they know that we value the content that they're bringing as well. We have a diversity focus group, so we asked them for ideas, And we asked the LGBTQ plus community to kind of really drive this. What would that look like? How could we make this campaign fantastic? Talked with our marketing team, got a whole branding together as well. And that was a really good campaign. Lots of engagement and lots of learning within that as well. And then a kind of, I guess, a more business side one was also reviews. So when it came to mid-year reviews, we put a lot of content around how to have a great review, how to prepare for a great review. But then we also had some user-generated content of what reviews had done for people personally. So how people had progressed in their career thanks to reviews. So we had kind of this mix of some support materials and also some nice stories from people saying, this is what happened from my reviews. Here's my tips if you're looking for a career development, how to ask for that within your reviews as well.
So when you first launched, I guess it was more just, let's get all of this content out to people very quickly, because now everyone's remote and needs to be supported from a development perspective and a comms perspective. So did you more or less just launch with, here's the kind of critical content that everybody needs, and then you've started to launch things like campaigns after now you've set up? Yeah,
exactly that. I think to begin with, it was very much like we felt we didn't want to lose the culture of sumo just because people weren't in a studio, and that's so important to us. So whilst there was learning there from Udemy and YouTube clips and all these other kind of, and Thrive as well, got some great content as well, particularly around well-being, we also had things that were social to connect people as well, that people really appreciated it at that point in time.
Nice. That sounds good. And we've got another question, this time from Nate. Hi, Nate. Out of everything you've done to drive adoption, what is the one thing you'd say is a must do for another organization?
Must do. There's a couple of must do's, I'd say. Is first of all, so I had a project team that included managing director, one of the founders, HR director, myself and the marketing director, and our IT director. And by having that team, so that team were there constantly, and we'd have a catch up every week in the launch, so they knew exactly what was going on. And having them behind it that whole way just made it easier then for other people to then, there wasn't the hard sell to try and get kind of like, no, this is really a great thing, because you already had those people talking within their groups about this thing is coming, this could be really exciting, this is also what we could do about it. So that I would say is kind of an absolute must. I'd also say, depending on your timescale, keep it simple to start with. The great thing about Thrive is that you can just change it. You can just reinvent and then reinvent again. And so I would say really know the purpose of what you're trying to achieve, stick with that, keep it simple, but don't worry about sticking that long term, because 3 months down the line, you could say, actually, this is actually how people are using it. So let's change it. And that's fine too.
100%. And in your case as well, and what I see is, if you can, don't launch with something like compliance, for example.
Because no, that would have been
employees will always think, oh, that's the place I go to complete data protection. Like you did, you launched with a really fun way to get people into the platform, and then there was a load of great social content. But imagine if it was like, oh, here's a load of courses to complete. It'd be an awful experience.
Yeah, I read somewhere that kind of L&D is morphed a little bit into entertainment and education, and I think there's a little bit in that, because like you say, it's why do people come back? And there's an element of, yes, I want to come back because I want to see what's new, but as you'll see when we go into some of the content, there's also a bit of what's happening? Have I missed out on Dojo? What's going on?
I think that's it. I think that's key, right? Keeping everyone's attention and engaged in the platform, right? Keeping it sticky. So the next part was time and permission. So maybe just touch on this and then we can get into the platform.
Yeah, so one of the big things, and I think this is probably true for a lot of organizations as well, is time. Where do people have the time to fit learning as well as everything else that you need to within your roles? So one of the things we did really early on is saying, if we're really serious about this, if we're really serious about people's development, and I think particularly the industry we're in is that people want to go into deeper learning as well. It's, they do want these learning moments. They want to have like every day. So moving away from it only being on the course to every day, but also there's time that they will want to have some time to really kind of see what's going on and really get into the depths of stuff. So we have allowed everybody 5 days personal development, and this is time that's paid for them to go at a time that suits them to go and learn. So you can book it, kind of like you do a holiday, but you can book it for learning, and that has been incredibly successful. So actually giving people the time to do it, but also when they want to do it, so that they can, like I say, it's a bit like a holiday, you can book it for yourself. That has been a key thing for this deeper learning, particularly when we're saying the classrooms are flipped, because now the courses are short. Now the courses are bite-sized. They're like an hour and a half, kind of 3 hours at the very most, because actually we're saying like the learning happens outside of that as well. So that was key for enabling that.
And was that something you did prior to implementing this, or is that kind of something you've embedded into?
So we launched that in February, but it was a very soft launch. There were some studios that were really chomping at the bit for it, but we did it really softly because we felt until we have a platform where we've got all the content and we have Udemy, it wasn't as impactful.
Got it. And it makes sense for an organization which is like at the cutting edge of technology, building new games for things like the PlayStation 5, right? You need your teams to be constantly upskilling and reskilling, right? So that they can build the next best game, right? And continuously learn. If they stand still, you're not going to build these amazing games for your customers and partners, right?
And it's also the interest of the people. Like people love to learn new things. And I think, it's not just within here, it's, if I think of retail, so I was before in retail, it was equally there. I want to learn about this new product. Let me see this video on this new product, or an unboxing. How popular are unboxing videos? An unboxing video of your own product, really exciting for people to watch.
Can imagine. Cool. Well, next, I guess, let's actually bring this all to life, right, and show some real examples. So what I'll do is I'll move off this slide deck. And I'll jump into your platform. Now, for everybody on the call, we will caveat this is we can't show everything in here because the nature of Sumo's work, they're building secret games for the PlayStation, everything else. We can't show the front page. So we'll jump through some examples of content from a user-generated perspective and some other things, and then we can show some other sites if needed as we work through this. So Jenny, where do you want to start with content and that type of thing?
Yes, it's a shame. So our front page is beautiful, but we have but we're just going to show some of the content today. So I think probably the first one will be that big day in at the very bottom. So this is a great example of how we used our site to bring people together. So this was an event that we had over 3 of our studios. And what it was we normally have this thing called the big day out. So we have a day where we go, do you know what, down tools, let's have a day out. We kind of have like a barbecue going, all this kind of stuff. Kind of a big field. It's a great event, bring the kids, all of that stuff. So instead we had the virtual big day in. And so what this was a mixture of different things, and it was such a brilliant day. Everything from yoga, you had people going on park runs together. Here you can see we had like virtual escape rooms, musical bingo quizzes. Obviously there was gaming within there as well. But what that does, that's an interactive PDF. So obviously, at the moment they're now not there because the event has passed, but people were able to click into them and then they could book through the site. How much easier is that from the old style? Like, previously it would have been a massive email out, someone from the admin team collating all the responses, sending out Outlook invites, yada, 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 yada. This, so much easier. Here it is, click on it, book yourself on. If that's the wrong time, unbook yourself, book yourself onto something else.
Nice.
It worked brilliantly. And it was so great that we had Dojo for it. But it was a brilliant event as well. We had a massive raffle at the end. Our CEO was in there also talking about the stuff that he'd done. It was a great way to bring people together virtually. And it was fantastic having Dojo to be able to make that easier.
So you shared this with, I guess, everybody at Sumo. They land on this, they can book onto mindfulness. They'll integrate with their calendar and that type of thing as well. Yeah,
exactly that. Seamlessly. Nice. It was brilliant.
That sounds good. you've got a question based upon what you've just shared, Jenny, so I'm just going to pause there. So Nate asked, did you leverage the platform to move from live training to asynchronous learning? If so, how did you pitch that to leaders?
Say that again. So did we move from what, sorry?
Did you move from live training to asynchronous learning? So how did you move off that?
So we do still have some live training. So we do still have some bite-sized learning that happens in the moment. Mm-hmm. But I can see that another question in terms of is the team global? Yes. So Sumo Digital, like I say, is mainly in the UK with one studio in India, but then we also Sumo Group, which also lead up with the learning and development. We also have a studio in Vancouver in America, as well as another one in the UK. So it's sort of then it actually becomes more difficult to create live learning as well. So having something where you can make learning happen where people wanted to know, it wasn't actually a very hard sell at all, because that's how we need to do it for all sorts of reasons, for the user, for the business, and for money as well.
Makes sense. We have another question around user-generated content. I think before we answer that, Steve, let's show some user-generated content, right? And then we can answer the question. What's a good example, Jenny, of kind of user-generated content, that type of thing?
I'm just saying in that, like, one of them is like that one that says creative design.
Creative and game design, this one?
Yep, that one. So that's a video from one of our lead game designers. So he is talking here all around like what it means to be I learned so much from this. It's actually, what does game design mean? And also, how can you be creative? And it was one of these that you don't have to be a creative to be creative. And how do you become creative? So it was a really interesting talk. So that was something that he had put together. And it helps people with their personal development as well when they're actually putting forward kind of presentations. That's actually something we encourage, to say, share your best practices. So this was a nice way that also sometimes what people do, because we have people that talk externally, sometimes what they do as well is they use Dojo as a kind of a trial run to be able to say, okay, let me put it on the platform, let me get some feedback, and then actually that's a good way before I kind of go externally with it as well.
And so aligned to what you just shared there on user-generated content, Steve asked, do you have a gatekeeper process to ensure user-generated content is accurate and politically correct before it's uploaded and shared with everybody across the site?
So no, we don't. This was something we really considered before we took on a learning experience platform, because what comes with that is saying we trust our people that the content that they're going to put out there is content that they stand by. Now, what the platform has, it has a reporting button, so a bit like Facebook. So what you can do is, if something is incorrect or something isn't appropriate, you are able to report it. And we have had to do that when something wasn't correct. And it was just really easy to do. You report it, that gets taken, that gets sent to the admins. Obviously, the admins are kind of checking their emails quite regularly. So they were able to take down the post, and then they were just able to say to the person that this is the reason why. Next time you do, just have her think about these things, just to make sure that the content is correct.
And have you had any problems so far of someone posting a video that's not correct or accurate?
No. We did have guidelines. I do also say we did have guidelines when we launched as part of our kind of launch content, to say what you should and shouldn't upload. To us, it's more, I guess, the big thing for us is that you just shouldn't upload anything that's a live project that might, kind of leak out to other people. That's a big thing for us. So, that was there for people to be able to read through, so that they knew exactly what they should and shouldn't put up.
Yeah, and what we see is like, we trust our employees to send emails, to probably WhatsApp, send Slack messages and everything else. If we trust them to share knowledge and communication through those portals, why wouldn't we in a platform like this, right?
And you see the person that uploads it, their name is all over it. So
if it's wrong, if it's inappropriate, we know that, right? Another question from Kaylee, thanks Kaylee, is how do you utilize the platform in collaboration with other live specific L&D initiatives like leadership development or something like that? And how do you deliver them in the platform?
So actually, if you go back, because there's a couple of examples of that in this.
Nearly went to the homepage then. Nearly.
We're all right. So within there, I think first of all, you can see the level up management fundamentals is one of them in there.
Management fundamentals.
Can you see it? So it's it has a big M on it. That's the one. So this here, we call these, they're called pathways, but we call them playlists. So what you've got here is, so when I'm talking about this flip classroom, so unconscious bias is a bite-sized course that we run. And unfortunately here we haven't got an example of how the events run, but it's really easy because what you have is you set up like the event. So you say like, this is the unconscious bias. These are the objectives of the course. And then we could set up a load of events just on that one post. And then people can sign up for the event that's most relevant, you know, for the timings that they have. But what we then say is, okay, now that you've experienced some unconscious bias, it's like I say, we want to make sure those sessions are really exploratory and experiential. So now you've experienced this, now you've explored this. For further information on unconscious bias, search unconscious bias. There is a playlist to get you started, but there is also more. And then also what we're saying to people is also, if you see anything else that you want to contribute using the tag unconscious bias. So what you suddenly have is you don't just have, I think, you know, when I think back again, you know, kind of like I was saying before, when I think back again, it was like the tutor in the room was the master of information and they were the, you know, they were like the mecca of information. What we're saying now is no, that person is there to facilitate the discussion. But actually, there's a wealth of information out there that, you know, as an L&D specialist, you can't possibly see all of that. But I've got like 1,000 people that might know some things from their different experiences that they can contribute as well. So this is a playlist that just shows you that. So this is some of the things that we say to people. This is a starting point. So also what we say is we dedicate 45 minutes to digital learning. That's part of your kind of essential learning that you can do it whenever you want. And this is what we're saying is, here's some suggested content to get you started on that. So unconscious bias resources, and then the next one we then have kind of from our diversity focus group, you've got things like BAME resources, LGBTQ+. So it's about education as well, not just kind of the unconscious bias, but also education on underrepresented groups. But the thing I'd like to highlight here is that what you can see is all the different names in there. So even if you go down to the next one, like you don't see Jenny Muhlwa, you see the people in the organizations that were really passionate about this and the content that they have contributed. And that is just brilliant because it shows how much people are engaged, but also how much people can contribute as well. So it's not all on you as an L&D specialist, because it's a headache when it is.
That's really interesting. I know we haven't got any examples here, but obviously you're leveraging the event functionality as well.
Yes.
There's events inside the platform where people can sign up to them, integrates to your calendar, that type of thing. So you're leveraging this. This isn't in your platform, but it just shows you as an example of that.
Yeah, so you can see exactly like that. Like you sign up, it's exactly the same. So we'd have the unconscious bias, and then you can have multiple events. And that's what I really like, because you only need one post, multiple events. People can see all the events that they can attend, and then they click on the one that's most suitable for their calendar. Exactly.
Well, thanks for that. We've got another question. There's quite a lot of questions today, which is good. So Helen asked, can games engines, e.g. Unreal Engine, be used in LXP LMS environments, as in exporting a game as a SCORM-like package? Maybe I'll take that one, Jenny, and then you can jump in. So I think the answer is it depends on your platform, to be honest. So a lot of platforms can support those types of packages. So the answer is definitely yes, if your platform can support HTML, you know, different packages of SCORM, that type of thing. But a lot of them can these days, Helen. So that's definitely an option. Have you actually, that's a good question, actually. Have you ever experimented with games within Thrive, Jenny, given?
Yes, we have. So actually we had a test site. So you set us up before we started, we were like, oh, we kind of want to test it out. And one of our programmers was like, well, I want to test out if I can put a game in there. So I can say that, yes, you can. it would slow the platform down incredibly if you put in something massive.
Yeah.
But we put in and it needs to really run off a laptop. But yeah, I had a lot of fun playing a game on Thrive on our
which game did they upload? What was it?
It wasn't one of our because obviously it was the sort of pre-site, so it was before we kind of had everything kind of all encrypted and everything like that. So it was actually a game that one of our programmers, his 12-year-old daughter, had created, and that was the one he put in. It was Giraffes and Dun and I can't remember what it was. It was a fun game to play.
Nice, I like it. So we touched on user-generated content there. Is there any other examples that we want to share, maybe on the communication side and things like that?
Yeah, so kind of, you can see there that Sue Monthly, that's kind of in the middle.
This one?
Yeah. So what we had before with our Sue Monthly was like a newsletter that got sent out. So it was a PDF of about 45 pages that used to get sent out on an email with all the updates. So with the launch of Dojo, kind of a few months afterwards, I was like, we really need to have someone that really is focused on internal comms, but kind of does it, like in a really different way. Yeah. So you've just seen there Harry. So she is our internal communications coordinator, and she's doing a fab job. She's actually just flipped the whole thing around, and we have now a chat show. So, and this is this element of fun. So she launched it with like this whole brilliant video of introducing herself, and she said, how she was going to be the chat show host, and she started with a little bit of just kind of playing on the different chat show hosts sort of stereotypes, and now this is how we have our updates, which is really nice because they're more in the moment. You're not kind of waiting for a massive magazine style that we used to have.
That's nice. And then in the Discover section, do you kind of structure these together so people can find them afterwards, that type of thing?
Yeah, so then we have a Sue Monthly in the Discover page. So again, like it's on that front page, but then it's also kind of more, we see the Discover page as more of an archive. And then within Sue Monthly, you then would have like the different months within there.
Nice.
Yeah.
So recordings will get stored in there. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. And then, just to finish off, because I'm conscious of everybody's time and your time, is there any other styles of content that would be worth sharing with people?
So I think the other one in terms of, like I was saying, that particularly during this time, we wanted to ensure that people feel connected. So I think that pub sing along one might be a good way of showing some of this. So yeah, like I said, we use Dojo for three things. It is for learning, it's for internal comms, and it's for social engagement, like social events as well. So what this is about is that we have someone that sets up a theme. So this theme was Pub Sing Along. There's a Spotify link, and then everybody gets to contribute the song that they would contribute to that theme, and it's wonderful. So you all contribute kind of like your links, your kind of songs to this playlist. It becomes the Sumo playlist. Everyone can listen to it, and kind of like when you're doing the washing up, it feels like you're part of Sumo, and it's really interesting listening to other people's music choices within a theme because they can be so varied even with a theme. And then you vote on your favorite song, and then the winner gets to choose the theme the following week. And it's a really nice thing. What song
did you vote for?
Spice Girls.
Classic. Nice. Nice. What song won? I
can't remember. Do you know what? Because we have them every week, and that was quite early on. So yeah, I can't remember from that week.
But that must be quite nice during like the start of this year when we're all working at home. It was very scary times, I guess, to kind of build that sense of community, maintain your culture, despite we can't all be together, right?
Yeah, it was. And also, when we had the Black Lives Matter movement as well, we had some content on there also around kind of educational resources. We had our CEO post also like his, kind of thoughts on it as well. And then what we also did was amplify creators of color, and that was the theme for the Spotify for that week. So there was also an element of just really nice, like actually it's not kind of the horrific things. There was also, do you know what, like let's also amplify it as well, and this was a lovely way to do that.
Nice. I like it a lot. And I guess what's next with Dojo for you then? Like, where do you want to take the platform next? have you got any big plans for the next kind of 6 months with it? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, so I think for us now, how I was saying kind of that you can reinvigorate. So I think that we'll probably do that more. We'll continue to listen to our teams. And then the next, I guess, big things for us is also around career development. As we've grown, there's a lot of opportunities for career development within Sumo Digital, and I think that some of that can definitely be used, within this platform to help people and support people and managers as well. And then, I think the big thing for any HR and L&D professional is also the world post-COVID, and the platform will definitely help with some of the thinking around that as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, I'm going to answer a few more questions. And if anybody's got any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. We've got 5 or 10 minutes left. So I've got a question here, Jenny. So I've got 2 questions. So the first question is, where did you get started with user-generated content? So I know at the beginning you kind of mentioned you kind of went into studios and you started to capture all of this content. But where did you actually begin with going into studios and saying, will you share your knowledge into this new platform? Like, was it quite difficult to engage people to do that?
Yeah, it was so long ago. I'm trying to think. It was actually during lockdown, so I wasn't able to go anywhere, which I think actually helped because you were able to in effect reach out to more people quicker than you would if you just went to one studio, because you could talk to Newcastle and half an hour later talk to Brighton. So we do, but we created this afterwards. We created a kind of like a centre group. So what I did do is I sent out an email asking anyone who wanted to be part of the test group. And so though we had like about 45 people test 2 sites, so we had like 2 front runners at the end, and we had 45 people testing both of those. And as part of the test, it was asking people to upload content. So I think thinking about that was the first step, because people were already, we had 45 people that were already used to sort of doing that. And then they were talking about it within their studios as well. So it was kind of there before we even began. But then we also do things like we just reach out to, so for example, like Black Lives Matter movement, we ask people to just share their resources. Have you read any books? Have you watched any documentaries? So people then were able to, it doesn't necessarily need to be a video or an article that you've written. It might be a YouTube link, or it might be, a podcast, for example.
Yeah, we did the exact same internally. That really helped. Just sharing ideas with each of your team, I think that definitely helps. We've got another question from Steve, which is, I wondered if you offered any incentives for uploading content to your team, i.e. if your content receives a certain amount of views, you get some type of reward.
So no, we didn't. And we did think about this to begin with, but we really didn't want it to become, like I say, because you've got lots of different people, and I think this is true even without the pandemic. You've got people at different stages of their career, and you've got people that at different stages able to contribute. And we wanted to say is this is a support mechanism, not another thing that we're adding to your plate that you're going to have to do. So what is interesting is there is a gamified element in Thrive, and actually that just did the trick on its own, because people started, when it first started, people were like, how do I get points?
Yeah. So
although we didn't incentivize, actually the platform does anyway, and then you can get different badges depending on the kind of content, how much you've contributed, or how much you've consumed, or how many things you've liked. The one thing I would say about views is what we did say to people is we said, don't think about the views, think about, there's like a little heart, so think about the hearts, because you might only get 20 people that watch your thing, but if 12 of those have hearted it, actually that's meant something to those 12 people, and that's actually more important than getting 100 views of people that thought it was all right.
100%, yeah, absolutely agree. And one more question, again, thanks Helen, is do you have a particular approach to tagging of content?
So to begin with, again, so we set the site up with some tags already. So how we set it up was we said, okay, so you've got your different, within games, your different disciplines. So therefore, what would the tags be within those disciplines? So I went out to some of our teams and said, what would be the interests within your like programming, for example. So, you know, like Helen, you said like Unreal Engine 4 obviously is massive within games. That came back as a tag, but then they came up with lots of others as well. So you made sure that then those tags were already in there, so people weren't creating. Kind of the standard ones were already there.
Perfect. And from a tagging perspective, what are the type of tags in the platform? Is it like leadership, as generic as that, or is it more specific to Sumo?
So what we've done with leadership again is that we went down, we knew what we wanted for our fundamentals program, so we created those tags around those interest areas. And we also asked our teams as well, you know, if you think about management training or leadership training, when you think about that, what are the things that spark your interest within that? And then we use those also as tags that when they came back as kind of like curated those into the top kind of 10.
Got it. And a follow-up question to that is, how do you cope with tagging for different countries and therefore different terminology?
We haven't had to. You have to have someone who does kind of look through the tagging. I wouldn't say we have so much of an issue of terminology, but what we do have an issue is if someone creates a tag and they misspell it, like unconscious. I mean, how many people, you know, unconscious is like a really easy thing to do wrong. So you do need to have someone that periodically goes in and sort of does a bit of a cleanse of the tags that we've had more misspellings. We haven't so far had a terminology issue.
That's good. That's good. So yeah, that one, it doesn't seem like different countries and regions have different terminology. So that's a good thing. Okay, well, I don't think there's any more questions. So I'll give everyone like 10, 15 seconds to final question in. But I think we will leave it there. Any more questions? Oh, no, I think we're all good. So I guess, firstly, thanks, Jenny, so much for sharing this kind of journey that you've been on. It's crazy to think that we met, what was it, February at Learning Technologies, and now everything that's happened and then actually seeing it brought to life is really good. So thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
And for everybody that's joined as well, our next webinar is on the 16th of December, slightly different one. We're launching our broadcasting tool with one of the UK's leading kidnap and hostage negotiators, Suzanne Williams. So it's going to be more of a kind of fun, interactive session. You can join a live broadcast. There's going to be polls and discussions with Suzanne sharing lots of insights, which should be